Has anybody driven a go-kart in Baroda anywhere?
Yes.
Or the
Like
speedway.
So if you enjoyed go-karting and like racing, you're going to have fun in this presentation. So today I'm going to be talking about aerodynamics, but more specifically aerodynamics in an F1 car, which is a race car. Okay, so let's start off with the basics. What is aerodynamics? Aerodynamics is basically how an object moves through air or a fluid. It is the motion through a fluid. It is how the air reacts. Now aerodynamics has four basic principles, which are weight, lift, drag and thrust. Over here you can see a free body diagram where all of the forces act. Now let's go through them one by one. So weight. So anyone who has passed class 9, have you learned the chapter force and laws of motion?
Yes.
So in that, weight is basically the effect of gravity when there is a certain mass. It acts downwards and it pulls the object to the earth. This is the first principle. The second principle is lift, and this is where it gets interesting. Now lift is basically an upward force which lifts an object off the ground. Now this is not a natural phenomenon, so it is achieved by an airfoil shape over here, as you can see. Now what do you notice when you see this shape? What we notice is it is curved on the top and straight at the bottom. Now this doesn't look too interesting or fancy, but it is actually really, aerodynamic, this completely creates the lift. Now let's see how it creates the lift. When air flows through the airfoil, air on top of the foil, it moves with a very high velocity compared to the bottom, because can you see this round shape? So now due to this, a low pressure is created on top and a high pressure is created at the bottom. And as we have all learned basic physics, air pressure always moves from high pressure to low pressure, thus pushing the object upwards. So this is the basic concept of how lift works. Now let's move on to the next principle, which is drag. Now drag is the resistive force that is caused by a fluid when an object moves through it. You know friction, right? This is a sort of fluid friction. Over here, as you can see, when the car is moving through the air of course can't go inside the car. Sorry?
It's pushing it back.
Exactly. It's pushing it back. It is a resistive force that is acting on an object. These are just two basic pictures of how it acts, when the car moves through the air, how it behaves. And the fourth one is thrust. Now, thrust is basically the opposite of drag. If drag is pushing the object backwards in the opposite of the motion, thrust pushes it in towards the motion. Now, this is a concept which is mainly used in aircrafts and jets, where the basic fundamental principle is that the thrust has to overcome the drag to ensure plane to fly, or the aircraft to zoom ahead. Now, let's come to the main point of today, Formula 1. Has anybody heard of Formula 1 before? Anyone? Okay, so if you haven't, let me tell you. Formula 1 is a sport where 20 of the fastest racing drivers in the world come and drive the fastest road cars, motorsport cars, around the fastest tracks around the world. Let me show you a picture. These are the cars on track and in action. These are open wheel cars which are completely engineered to produce speed, cornering speed. Okay, so now let's learn the aerodynamics. Let's learn the basic principles that is used in an F1 car. Now, I told you about lift, right? How it puts a plane upwards, how it pushes a plane upwards. Now imagine a plane inverted. That's what a Formula 1 car is. Instead of up force, which is lift, when the airfoil shape is inverted, obviously it will become opposite. Low pressure will go on bottom and high pressure on top, which will push the object downwards, this airfoil down. This is known as downforce. It is a very important aspect of Formula 1, and this is the only reason the cars are able to go so fast. Now let me explain the importance of this downforce. Why is it important? गाड़ी तरह से चलती है. Why do we need to engineer at such a high level? Can anybody guess at what speed a Formula 1 car goes through a corner? A corner, not on the street, on a corner.
192 miles an hour.
Sorry?
192 miles an hour.
Okay, in kilometers per hour that would be around 300 as fast.
No.
That's very
It would be 180 to 190 kph in fast corners and maybe in hairpins and
Okay. So it basically ranges from 50 to 300 or 290 kilometers per hour. I can give you an example in UK, Great Britain. There is a Cox corner which is a corner which is taken without putting any brake, and it goes at 290 kilometers per hour. Now let's imagine if you would drive a road car at that high speed on a corner, what would happen? It would just fly away.
Yes.
It would turn flip, correct, and it would cause a lot of damage, and it's not practically possible. Now this downforce, what it basically does is the aerodynamic components of the car, which I'll get to in a minute, push the front tires and the rear tires into the asphalt, which is the racetrack. We can call it just, it sticks the car into the ground. So even at such high speeds, the car will flow through the corner without even lifting a bit. Okay. So now let's look at the aerodynamic parts. Okay. Before that, let me explain you what an F1 car is made of. And to simplify it, put it in very simple terms, an F1 car has two main parts. Okay, one is the chassis, which is the bodywork of the car, and the second is the engine. Now, aerodynamics is heavily on the chassis, the design of the car. The engine is too very complicated, but we'll not get into that today. So now, as you can see, what the parts of this car are. We have a front wing, a rear wing, the chassis or bodywork, the underbody or the diffuser, and then the rear suspension and the front suspension. Now the main downforce is created by the front wing, the rear wing, and the underbody, or also by ground effect, which I'll explain in a while. Now the majority of this downforce, which I explained to you, is created by the front, the rear, and the underbody, okay, of the car. The main chassis or the bodywork actually hinders with the downforce and reduces it, the rear and front suspension as well. Now let me show you a video of how it actually works. I'm sorry there is no audio, but I think it's self-explanatory. So over here we have taken the McLaren from 2016, the McLaren F1 car, and we'll see how the air flows through it. This is the front wing, and these are the two main parts which actually causes the flow of the air to the rest of the car. So this is, assume it as the air, which is just dirty air or the simple air passing through the car. And when the air passes through the front wing, as you can see, these vortices are formed. Vortices, I'll explain that in a minute. These are formed, and you can read it as follows. Okay, so now let's move a little back over here. Now let me explain you how the downforce or how the negative lift is actually caused over here. Let's start off with the front wing. As you had seen in that video, there were vortices being created, which is basically turbulent air flowing along an axis. Now this is advantageous to us, and it also hurts the downforce of the car. As we saw in the video, when the air passes through the front wing, there are two vortices formed, which will allow the car to, firstly, it will not hinder with the bodywork of the car, and it will allow the diffuser over here at the back to push the air out at a fast speed. So when the diffuser removes all of this air at a very quick speed, a low pressure situation is formed at the rear. When it is accelerated, the air is accelerated quickly. This causes rear downforce. Now over here, can you see these two end plates at the front wing and the rear wing? What they do is they will prevent the generation of really uncontrollable and really big vortices, which will hinder with the downforce of the car. It will basically push the air outwards, which will help us, it will help with overall aerodynamics, which will cause lesser drag to the car. Now there is a very fine balance between downforce and speed. If you will increase the downforce to a very high extent, the speed will decrease. Because if the car is getting sucked into the ground, obviously the straight line speed will reduce. So depending on the kind of track, there is a very fine balance. It has to be adjusted in a way that the top speed of the car along the straight. Let me show you a picture of an F1 track. You will understand it better over there. Okay. So now these are three different kind of circuits that I have picked. This is in Bahrain, this is in Baku, which is Azerbaijan, and this is Monte Carlo in Monaco. Now as you can see over here, it is the straight. Over here, downforce is required at a minimum level because there are no turns and you need the top speed of the car. Hence, the car is very streamlined, as you would have seen, which will not block or which will not cause a lot of drag. And when we come to the corners, this is where the downforce is really important. When the car is taking this open corner at very high speed, let's say 150 kilometers per hour or 200 kilometers per hour, that downforce will help it not to fly off the track. Okay, and if you are wondering about the margins when the cars race, the margins are in milliseconds and even microseconds at sometimes. So it is a very close sport. So these are three circuits. As you can see, at different circuits, different amounts of downforce are required. In this circuit, as you can see, there is a lot of straight part. Okay, so over here a lot of downforce is not required. More straight line speed is required. So the size of the front wing and the rear wing will be smaller compared to here or here, to not hinder the car a lot and create less drag. And if you will compare it to here, it is all corners and turns. This is Monaco. It is the hardest circuit in the track or in the calendar of F1. Over here, the teams have to put as much downforce as they can because, as you can see, they are very narrow corners. Only two cars on this track will fit side by side, just really closely. And to avoid crashes and all, so they need to have a very high level of downforce in this track. So that was the basic concepts of aerodynamics. Now let's look into something just for fun. As an evolution of F1 cars. So as you can see, F1 first started in 1951. So in 1951, technology wasn't that advanced, and people just did motor racing as a passion. It was not a full-fledged, let's call it a sport. Only people who were really passionate about racing used to race. So the car design was really simple. It just compared of a simple monocoque structure and an engine. Not much of aerodynamics was used. But as technology advanced and engines became more powerful, speeds increased, and due to this the cornering speeds increased. Thus slowly and steadily the front wing, the rear wing was introduced. Ground effect. Now if you remember, I talked about the floor creating downforce too. Now what this floor does is, it will create an area of low pressure underneath the car. It is shaped in a way that the rake is 0.5 degrees downwards. Now this will cause low pressure at the bottom and create downforce, which will stick the car to the ground. And it has evolved through the years. This is the 2019 car,
Yes.
2019 car of Lewis Hamilton. This is the 2004-5 Ferrari, and like these, all the cars exist. Now let's look into something a little bit more fun. The cost of an F1 car. Now Formula 1 is not a very cheap sport. It is very easy to get into because it is all about money and money. The average cost of a Formula 1 car, this is 2019, it has become even more expensive now. But the average cost of an F1 car in 2019 was $12,200,000 for a single car. Let's not talk about what would happen if the car crashes. The front wing and rear wing, you can see the prices here. The engine is the most costly part of a car because that is where the real engineering takes place. But we are not going to discuss that today. And so now in this presentation, I hope you have all learned what aerodynamics is. And just one small joke for you. Jeep Wrangler, less aerodynamic than a car. Okay. Thank you.
As you said, a cow is more aerodynamic than a Jeep Wrangler. Can you please explain why it is so?
It's pretty self-explanatory. It was not engineered properly. As you can see,
I wanted to explain the model of a cow, not of a Jeep.
it's a joke, Arjun.
It's part of aerodynamic. Explain. I didn't get it how a cow is more aerodynamic than a Jeep.
It's simple. If you throw a cow, it will fly better than a thrown jeep.
Yeah, but can you please explain the model?
Okay, let me explain you in simple terms, the way you would understand it. When the air flows through the cow, a cow is very simple. It does not have complex parts. Air is not being restricted over here. But in a car, in this Jeep Wrangler, as you can see, there is a lot of air is really fumbling out. There is not a clean path of air and a lot of vortices are formed. That's all.
Yes, sir. So also one more thing, front wing. It's about the front wing.
Do you want me to show the picture of it?
No, that's fine. Does it cut through air or does it make make the air go up? Like does it make it rise?
Okay. So let's go to a picture of the front wing. Okay. Now here, as you can see, in the front wing can you see there are different components of the front wing. It is not simply one piece
Yes.
of carbon fiber. And also I should mention the whole car is made of carbon fiber to reduce weight and also increase the strength of it.
Yeah.
It is different wings. These are the wings of the front wing and these are the end plates. So now when the air will pass through, it cuts through the air, correct? But it will also it doesn't simply cut through the air. It will push air outwards, away from the car. As you have seen in that with the high out of control vortices.
Yes.
Now that will hinder with the aerodynamics of the car. Okay, the barge boards and all. So it will cut through the air, no doubt, but it will also send it outwards to reduce the resistance, the drag.
Yeah. So also another question related to this. Why does dirty air affect the car? And also when you're following a car and you get the slipstream, and sometimes there's traffic, so that can slow you down. So why is it different? And why does it go
Okay.
faster sometimes instead of slower even without DRS?
Okay. So now when let's say two cars are going down a straight, now when the car, what is drag? Drag is caused when the air hits the car basically and it hinders the car. Now when the air hits the car, it is slowed down obviously. But now if a car is following closely behind the car, that air is not hitting the second car, so it is getting a free air, correct? Downforce is getting reduced, but the drag is getting reduced as well, which will increase the speed of the car. So when we are going through a straight, that is why when two cars are following, it's called a slipstream. The second car will have an increased speed than the first one because it is not pushing air away. As I explained to you here, it pushes the air outward. The second car is just following this car, correct? It is not being hindered by this air. The air is already being pushed out by this car.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your second question? The dirty air, loss of downforce, correct? In the corners. Now, to make sure that the aerodynamic parts work properly, the air needs to come straight. When the air exits an F1 car, it is, as you had seen in those vortices, it was very disrupted. Now, if that same imagine that disrupted air coming over here, you think the car will work correctly?
No.
It needs straight air to go through it, correct? That's why it is a very big issue actually, which has been eradicated to a very high extent this year. That it makes following very difficult. In the corner, when the car is behind the other corner, it loses up to 54% of its downforce due to this dirty air coming at the back of the car. This is a really big problem that was hindering racing. And in 2022, new rules have been applied, which will only cause 14% decrease of downforce rather than the 54% caused earlier, to improve racing, to promote closer racing.
There's just one more question. What is the difference between aerodynamic structures of F1 cars? Like now you said the evolution of F1 cars. But in 1950 or 1951 there was no aerodynamics. So now let's say you compare the 2004 Ferrari, let's say, with the 2019 Mercedes, let's say. So are there any disadvantages that the 2019 car has where the 2004 car has the advantages?
Okay. Now, this is a picture not drawn to scale. If you will look at the cars in the past, they were really small. The weight was extremely less than the cars nowadays. Cars nowadays weigh between I think 780 kgs to like 850 kgs,
Yeah.
somewhere around that. Cars earlier used to be much lighter, smaller, and therefore quicker. They had lesser levels of downforce, no doubt, but they were much more lighter. And as you all know, the lighter the car, the more faster it will go. So that was an advantage the older cars had. But nowadays the aerodynamics are so complicated and such new systems and new technologies have come into place where even though the weight might be more, the aerodynamics and the downforce and the engine more importantly is so advanced and it can go faster than the previous generation of cars.
Okay.
You just said that there have been changes to the aerodynamic regulations. So what are these changes?
Okay, let me show the first picture I showed. Okay, over here, this was you might not be able to see it very easily, but this is a picture from 2022. This is a picture from 2021. okay, can you see over here? It is very, the shape of the car is very boxy. It is a very boxy shape, and this was an issue in all the previous generation of cars, where I just explained that the downforce level were affected when a car was following another car while racing. And as I mentioned, the rules this year, the regulations that the FIA, the head body of the Formula 1 has integrated this year, is that the wings at the back, can you see these are curved now? It might not be very visible, but the wings are much more curved than before. The shape is much more different, and it has become much more less complicated. Over here, as you can see, the barge boards might not be very visible, but over here, can you see these barge boards? They cause the most disruption of air when it passes through it. So these barge boards have been eradicated this year, and the front wing has also become more upward. So instead of the dirty air going straight at the back, it is pushed upwards. So when a car is following another car behind it closely, it is not hindered by this dirty air, which means cars can follow each other more closely in the corners.
I would also like to ask a question. What is the most aerodynamic shape in existence?
The most aerodynamic shape in existence. Nowadays there are many different kind of shapes, and they have become actually at very high level. But the airfoil is, I think the airfoil is the basic shape which is used. But it can be edited in ways, like the shape can be modified in several different ways to increase its efficiency.
No, actually, I forgot the answer. A teardrop is the most aerodynamic shape possible.
Okay. So a teardrop is basically an airfoil shape only.
Yes. It very closely resembles
Yeah.
F1. So why can't F1 made it fully into a teardrop?
It can't. Okay.
Why can't?
Now I don't know if, let me explain you. In F1 is much more complicated than just the aerodynamics. Okay. It comprises of its engine, the suspension, hydraulics, the gear changes, and all of that. You might be seeing an F1 car from outside as a simple, just a shape. But if you will look inside this F1 car, there are very high and complex electrical systems which have to be stored. The 800 kg inside is it's not empty. There is a lot of other stuff in the car. The engine, the battery, and all of these come. The MGUK, the MGUH. Do you know what that is, or should I? Okay, it is basically a part of the engine. When the car is moving at very high speeds and the brakes are getting heated, correct? This heat energy is converted into electrical energy and stored in a battery, which can be later deployed to increase the top speed of the car. It is called hybrid engines. Hybrid engines.
I know hybrid engines are just
Yeah. So it can't be completely a teardrop because it has to go on the track. It has to have a suspension, and it has to have much more components. Where do you fit the engine that way? It is much more complicated than just making it a shape.
One question. Is clear air turbulence related to vortices?
Sorry.
Is clear air turbulence? It's a kind of turbulence that is not being able to detect by any kind of radar or machine.
Yeah.
Is it anyway related to vortices?
Okay, so what is vortices? Vortice is basically turbulent air which is flowing on an axis, correct? And what was the first thing you said in your question, the first part of it?
That clear air turbulence.
The clear air turbulence.
Clear air.
Yeah. So vortices can be used, as I told you, it can be used to our advantage and also our disadvantage. The free turbulence can also help us when it goes away from the car and will allow the air to flow freely inside. It will not hinder with the aerodynamics as much. But correct, it is not being able to detect it too well. But some of these things are not, it has not advanced to such a high level yet. So if these things are happening to our advantage or disadvantage, they haven't been discovered or noticed.
I have often seen videos where there happen to be crashes of F1 cars and which cause death at times and much damage to property also. And there are some safety issues. How does aerodynamics change to prevent that? For example, how you said there was change in the car structure to keep it on the ground. But still we see so many accidents where the car starts, getting launched because of the accident. How would you suggest that aerodynamics be changed to prevent that?
Okay, so now there are two main reasons why crashes happen. One is a mechanical error, or one is a driver error, which is a human fault. Now there will always be a driver error because humans aren't perfect, and sometimes they do make mistakes, even the best racers in the world. So that aerodynamics can't help too much on that. But the mechanical errors or the aerodynamic issues, how has that improved over the years? Let me tell you. if you had seen in the pictures earlier, like when in evolution, can you see over here there is no front wing? Nothing over here. There is no aerodynamic component of this car. It is just a monocoque structure. But over the years, the downforce level and the weight of the cars has increased. Not only that, safety in F1 is such a high priority that a new invention was actually introduced in 2019 called the Halo.
It was introduced in
2018, the Halo. So Halo was a protective device over here. Can you see this part? Now the driver sits in the cockpit, right? So this, whenever a car, let's imagine an airborne crash. What if a car jumps on top of another car, which has happened in previous years,
Yeah, 28.
and it was very dangerous for the driver also, the racer. So a monocoque structure, a halo, was introduced on the monocoque, which would protect any driver from any impact or any debris that would go at high speeds on them. And it can now in the current regulations, it can withstand a force of 130 newtons. That's how strong it is. It is made of complete carbon fiber, and it can withstand very heavy forces. And also, the last death which occurred, sadly, was of Antoine Hubert in 2019. Since then, a lot of changes have been made, and deaths in motorsport are quite common in earlier, like in the past, they were quite common. But nowadays, safety is at such a high level; it is very rare. Even injuries are so rare. As just last year, just I think 1 month ago, there was a race in Saudi Arabia where there was a crash of I think around 30 Gs, and still the driver came out unscathed without any damage. And not even that, last year in Great Britain there was a crash of Max Verstappen had a crash of 60 Gs. Now basically 60 Gs is compare your body weight 60 times on yourself. Imagine that big of a crash. And if the safety would not have been to such a high extent, nobody would have come out of that crash alive. But the driver came out of that crash with just a little bit of dizziness and no other health issue whatsoever. So safety is a very high priority in Formula nowadays.
Would you like to comment on a difference in Formula 1 motorsport such as F2 F3?
Okay. Now, Formula 1 is not the only branch of motorsport. Okay. Formula 1 is the elite and the highest level. But you have to, like, let's say you are in school. You are not directly promoted to grade 12. Are you? You go to grade 1, 2, 3, 4 and slowly. So all the young drivers, they start their career in go-karts, in karting. So the junior years are in karting. Then they go on to open wheel racing, which is basically Formula 1. There are different categories such as Formula 2, Formula 3, Formula 4, Formula Regional, and a lot of other series too, which are not regulated by the FIA. So it is a stepping stone. A racer cannot simply step into a Formula 1 car without any other experience. Because it might seem very easy on paper, like you just sit in the car and drive, but it's not that easy. In just one single lap around a circuit, drivers in corners, they've experienced 6 Gs of force on themselves per corner. Now imagine your own body weight 6 times on your neck, pushing you the opposite way the car is turning. So it's really difficult like that. It's very difficult to get used to it. So you need to strengthen yourself. So this only happens when you practice in lower series, where the cars are comparatively slower and safer too. Yeah.
I was talking about the aerodynamics of the...
Oh, the aerodynamics. Okay. The aerodynamics, I don't have any pictures here right now, but I can explain it to you. Okay, in Formula 2, let me explain you what happens. The cars have a similar structure. The aero part of the car is same for all of the 22 cars, I think. 22 cars. It's similar, and the engine is also similar. Because in F2, it is not a competition between the cars. It is a competition between the drivers to see which driver can make it in
F1.
In F1. Not in F1, but who can be the top of all of these drivers. So if you are in equal machinery, who is winning? So all of them are same, they are stable. They are not as complicated. They have much lesser downforce, lesser weight, and also take speed, and also take their top speed is much lower. It's around I think 250 kilometers, something like that. They're much slower and also safer too.
Yeah,
because at a young age, there is always danger. There is always risk. It's not too safe. As I just told you, Antoine Hubert, who died in 2019, he died in Formula 2. He never got the chance to make it in Formula 1. So it is always dangerous, but it is much simpler. You can tell it for the younger drivers.
Also, one more thing is that how much weight can the halo take up? Okay, like
110, 130 newtons of force on it.
okay.
Yeah.
How does the DRS work?
Okay. So now we've talked enough of the technical aspects of this car. Racing also has to be fun. Now at certain times when we are going across the straights, let me show you. That is
DRS rates.
yeah, that's a little more complicated. But when you are going through a straight, sometimes the top speed of cars are so similar it becomes hard to overtake. So a new system was introduced in 2010, 11 I suppose. It was known as DRS, which is the drag reduction system. What this used to do was, if two cars are both going through the straight, and if the second car is within 1 second of the car in front, a flap at the rear wing will open, reducing the drag and increasing the top speed by around 13 kilometers per hour, 10 to 12, 13 kilometers per hour. Yeah. So you only tell me, if this wing was open or the wing was closed, where is less drag being experienced?
There is less drag on the rear wing.
It's open, therefore the top speed will increase, less resistance. The driver behind will have an opportunity to overtake the driver in front. This was just a concept to improve racing and make it more interesting for the viewers and also the racers, so that there is some overtaking on track.
One question. In aviation, I'm talking about in general, aerodynamics in aviation. Why do you think stalls occur?
Why do you think?
Stalls occur like,
As in, can you explain?
let's suppose an aircraft is going straight through air. Nothing is happening, normal aerodynamics is taking place. But a stall is a condition when the aircraft speed becomes too low to keep it to give it that particular lift.
Okay. I'll answer your question. Just a second. So, if you remember, I had talked about a concept known as thrust, which is basically opposing the force that opposes the drag in the free body system, free body diagram I showed you. Now, to keep an aircraft in the sky and not make it stop or stall, as you just explained, there has to be, the thrust has to be greater than the drag. It has to overcome the amount of drag that is being caused on the plane. So this thrust, there must be some issue with the thrust, I feel. The thrust might not be overcoming the amount of drag experienced by the plane. This might lead to a stall.
Can you explain what is vortex of air, as you were trying to explain in that video, where the air which passes through the front wing and creates vortex? Can you explain the movement of the vortex?
So, as I explained, vortex or vortices in plural is basically the flow of turbulent air along an axis. It is turbulent, no doubt, but it is not going haywire. There is a certain axis which is it's going around it. So, as I had showed you in that video, I won't play it right now, but as you had seen in that video, it actually helps the aerodynamics in the aerodynamic body of the F1 car. So, these vortices are basically turbulent flows of air which are caused by when they pass through the car. They can be to our advantage or disadvantage.
He just said that a stall slows down to let's say a moving object too much. So I've heard in F1 the term anti-stall. So what is the difference between a stall and an anti-stall?
It's completely two different things. Anti-stall is basically a mechanical issue. It is not related to the aerodynamics because you're not flying in the air. F1 car cannot fall much deeper into the ground. A stall is a system that is caused by the gear shift. When sometimes they lose the clutch, they lose drive, what we call it. That is an anti-stall. So it kicks up to prevent the car from stopping on the track. If ever a stall occurs, the car cannot stop in the middle of the track. It needs to pull safely aside. Let's say the engine blows up or there is some reliability issues. The anti-stall kicks up to prevent the driver from using the engine, but just the motion to bring the car to a halt at a side. That's where the anti-stall is.
Okay.
So this might be a little off topic. Let us suppose a ball is flying in the air. This is related to aerodynamics, and I'm sure when a ball is flying in the air, lightness effect works on it. So how does it affect the aerodynamic of the ball?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Okay, a Magnus effect works on a ball when it's flying in the air. So how does it change the aerodynamics of the ball?
Do you know what the Magnus effect is?
Yeah.
Can you tell me?
Magnus effect is when you give a ball a spin or something, it will travel a lot more than when you're just throwing it. So when a ball is being thrown, how does it change its aerodynamics?
So when the ball
is being taken.
Okay. So if the Magnus effect is taking place and let's say the ball is spinning at a high speed, so are you talking about it spinning in the way we want or in the opposite direction of the motion?
always when the ball spins in the opposite direction, the ball will
Okay.
travel more.
So let's say when the ball is spinning, the air which will flow through it will get accelerated out, which will cause a little bit more of lift, as I had just explained earlier at that airfoil shape. The curve, it causes a little, not too much at a high extent, but it causes a little bit of low pressure, which will cause a slight lift, which helps the ball to go ahead when it's spinning. In basketball, it is seen very commonly, the Magnus effect. When we are making a basket, we spin the ball while we shoot it. That increases the height and lifts the ball.
I do not particularly remember the term for the sport, but if there is an F1 car which is moving at a particular speed, and there is another F1 car moving right behind it, this F1 car the behind one tends to become a little faster because of
Yes,
low
known as
pressure.
slipstream.
Slipstream. Thank you. Can you explain that concept about how the air vortex which are formed, it creates a path of less air pressure and allows it to overtake?
So in this picture right here, as I had explained, the front wing and the rear wing have something called as end plates. Now what the only main objective of this end plates are, when the air flows through it, it is to stop the generation of out of control turbulent vortices. If they become out of control to a very great extent, they will completely hinder the car, will spin out. We don't want that. We don't want that turbulent air flowing through the parts, the aerodynamic parts of the car. We want it to go outwards, to not hinder the car when the air flows, the straight air flows through it. So when a car is following another car, only the front car is having to push the air out of the way. When the car is following it, it is in clean air. So there is no air which is actually resisting it. It is already being resisted by the front car. Therefore, the back car, the car at the behind will gain a slipstream advantage, which will increase the speed by I think 9. It depends on the track, maybe 13 kilometers per hour, something like that.
You said that like F1 has started like re-enhancing the cars according to aerodynamics. So have they like introduced some security systems also in the cars,
Security as in related to what? Security?
like security of the driver?
Yeah.
Safety.
Okay. Just before the question was asked on safety of F1. Now, do you want to know the aerodynamic view of it or just the general safety of the car?
Aerodynamics.
Okay. So, as I explained you, downforce is the thing that sticks the car into the ground. Now, to make sure or to ensure that the car doesn't lift all of a sudden and get thrown off the track, there are different areas like the diffuser. It is a path. Diffuser is a kind of device that is specifically made for the rear downforce of the car. It is when a car goes through a corner, the rear is very loose. Okay. So the diffuser basically accelerates speed out of the back of the car at a very high speed. And as you have seen, when there is a high speed of air, the pressure becomes lower, hence downforce. So the bottom of the car will stick into the ground, which will prevent the driver from spinning or crashing when he takes the corner. So that is one. And also I mentioned a lot of things like the halo, the cockpit, the monocoque. All of these things improve safety. And it is still being advanced. It is not that the safety is not 100% yet. It is always getting better and better each year.
This may seem off topic, but it's related to F1. Are there any fuels other than, let's say, petrol, for example, and octane, which
Yeah.
increases the speed? Are there any other fuels used to increase the speed of an F1 car?
Okay. So very recently nowadays, a fuel has become a very big factor into a Formula One. Different fuel companies actually partner directly with F1 teams, such as Shell, Castrol, and all of these, Mobil, and all of these companies. They actually create a specific race fuel. Now, petrol has the most amount of energy density stored in it. So, in the less amount of petrol, there is a high energy delivery that is caused when it is combusted. So, what we use in our day-to-day life, the normal fuel, when we use a normal petrol in our usual cars, it is almost similar to race fuel, up to 90%. That 10% has high octane, as you mentioned, which increases the combustion and makes the energy efficiency more.
Just related to the question asked, what fuel is used in an F1 car right
Yeah.
now?
Now, out of all the fuels, petrol has the most energy density inside it. So it will of course give the most and high efficient output rather than the other cars. Now remember, an F1 car needs to be very light. So you cannot have a lot of fuel in it. The fuel has to be as less with the maximum amount of energy capacity delivery. So an F1 car holds about 110 kgs of fuel per race. It used to be lesser earlier because refueling was allowed, but that had a lot of flaws. It was expensive, dangerous. So that has been eradicated, and the whole race fuel has to be stored. For now, in the car there is basically a fuel box where 110 kg of fuel is stored. Now this 110 kg of fuel has to be used for 300 kilometers, the average length of an F1 race. So the fuel is basically 90% of the petrol. It is petrol only. Petrol is used, but it has 10% of different components such as high octane and few of these which actually make it a race fuel. The efficiency is increased. The reliability is also increased.
I would also like to ask a question. To increase the efficiency of the fuel, why don't they use turbocharger or a supercharger? Because they can just use the air which is in the slipstream to power the turbocharger.
Turbocharger is present in the engine. Engine has six different components. If you want, I can explain each and every one of them. But a turbocharger is definitely used for the fuel. It has an MGU-H, an MGU-K, control electronics. It has an ICE, internal combustion engine, the main part, and a turbocharger, of course, which actually helps the, as you said.
What if any part of the car gets damaged, or it breaks, or it gets broken? Then wouldn't it affect the aerodynamics of the car?
Definitely, it does. Let's assume you are racing and you crash with a slight crash with another car or something, and let's say half of your front wing is removed. Now, just tell me what would happen if this front wing would not exist. Air would go haywire inside the car, which would hinder the aerodynamics.
It would be unbalanced.
Therefore, the downforce will be reduced significantly. The car will not be able to turn. There will be a lot of understeer in the car and oversteer also in a few corners. So it will really hinder. That's why in F1, the front wing is a detachable part. So if your front wing ever gets damaged in an F1 race, you can always change it in a pit stop. It increases the time, you will lose time, but it can be changed. But if a more important part, such as let's say the bodywork or the rear wing, if these parts break, there is no way to fix it in the middle of a race. The car has to retire, there is no other option. Because it is too dangerous to drive with lesser downforce. It will cause a lot of risk to the driver and also to the car. More damage can occur to the car, which will become more expensive.
What is the difference between understeer and oversteer?
Okay. Now, this is not related to the topic, but okay. When you are going through a corner, sometimes there is a loss of rear downforce and there is wheel spin. So when a driver turns his steering wheel all the way, but the car is still not turning, this is known as understeer. There is, even with a lot of input, the car is not turning. That's why in some corners they will go wide, they will miss the turn. And oversteer is basically when even with a little bit of input, the car will move all of a sudden. Okay, with a little bit of input, the car will move too much and it will spin. These are two issues that drivers sometimes face due to the lack of downforce or wheel spin.
Okay.
Any other questions?
So the world's fastest car is Venom GT. So what is the difference between the aerodynamics of the car and the F1 car?
Okay. Now Venom GT is a road car and F1 is an open wheel car. That is the first and foremost thing what you will look into a car. Do you know the engine which is inside the Venom GT?
Supra.
But it's cheaper, right?
It's not cheaper. It is a high turbocharged. The engine that is present in this Venom GT is basically an aircraft engine. It is like a jet engine. These are just 1.6 liter turbocharged V6 engines. They aren't that efficient, that high delivery. Okay, they have to work at a long distance and they have to be reliable. It's not like they will only drive it for like it's a short period of time. They have to sustain for long periods of time. Because this is right now the most aerodynamic, the most engineered advanced engine, efficient engine.
My question is also something related to that. It's that the Venom GT has the highest speed of about 440 kilometers per hour, whereas the highest speed noted by a Formula One car was around 390 kilometers per hour. Yeah.
That 390 was a Honda car which was tested on white sands. It is not in a race. The highest measured speed on a race, on a racetrack is I think 351 kilometers in 2017.
372.
No, 354 battery was.
Okay.
It might be more somewhere, but in recent time these are the highest.
Okay, fine. And it was about 350 kilometers per hour, and of the Venom GT it was about 425.
Okay, let me answer this question with another question. Is your Venom GT able to corner such high corners at a regular pace?
No, that wasn't my question. My question was not related. It was that both of them were noted on a straight line,
Yeah.
and we have noticed that an F1 car is more aerodynamical it's more aerodynamic than a Venom GT car.
They are
So-
completely different concepts.
They are completely different concepts. And how does a Venom GT car, which is mostly curved but not as sharp or as streamlined as a F1 car, still achieve higher speed if not for the road?
Because the engines are completely different. The speed doesn't only depend on the aerodynamics. It also depends on the energy delivery and the energy output. The engine used in Venom GT is actually a jet engine. It is and it actually contains jet fuel as far as my knowledge goes. The F1 car uses petrol and it uses a 1.6 liter turbocharged V6 engine. So basically 6 pistons. So they are completely different. The power that can come out of this engine is nothing compared to that one.
So if we put an engine of that car, if we could fit it in an F1 car, do you think it would be faster than the Venom GT?
It definitely would be faster, no doubt. But it will the downforce is inversely proportional to the speed of the car. The faster you go, the lesser your downforce becomes. Okay. So if you would fit that engine in here, if it was a straight, no doubt it would go. It would go at that and match that speed or go faster. But when taking turns, it will lose so much downforce that it will not be able to take a turn. It will not be able to brake in time. The brakes will not be able to slow the car down in the time for the turn to come, and actually it will lose all of its downforce before the turn at such a high speed.
You actually didn't answer my whole question, last one. Are there any other fuels, like other than petrol and octane, are there any other fuels in an F1 car?
There are different types of fuels, no doubt. It is not simply petrol. There are different, basically, structures, and there are many different. In the race fuel, it's not only petrol. There are several other components.
Sorry, I think you can answer both the simultaneous. You can answer both simultaneously my question. We can do it together. What type of petrol is used? There are many different types of petrol. So what type is used in F1 right now?
Okay, an F1 car contains around 90 to 95% of the simple petrol that we use in our road cars. It has a 5%. There is only a 5% difference in the fuel. It contains high octane and few other components like this, which actually increases the efficiency of the fuel. It will deliver more energy to the engine and increase the speed, no doubt. And actually, I actually wanted to add to my answer. In 2014, Fernando Alonso had actually compared in his 2014 Ferrari. He had kept during the practice session. First, he had fueled simple petrol that we use in our road cars and done a few laps. Then he came back and he switched to the race fuel and he did a few laps. The difference in this lap time was 9/10 of a second. This is a really huge margin in Formula 1, almost a second difference between the two fuels.
How much fuel is consumed in one F1 race?
110 kg approximately. Many of the time they underfuel the car, but approximately 110 kg of fuel is used.
Will airborne water vapor affect the aerodynamics of
Yes,
the car?
humidity is a very big factor. These cars have to go through extreme conditions. They do not only race in sunlight. They have to go through wet conditions, dry conditions, humid conditions. Even conditions where they're at such a high altitude, the air is very less dense, like in Mexico. In wet conditions, the major changes in the tires. They have wet tires and intermediate tires, which have grooves in the tires, which will push the water away. And also the aerodynamics does not get affected to that high of an extent, but the cars become significantly slower, definitely.
How many G's will a F1 car experience while going in a straight road?
In a straight line, there is minimal G's, not too much of lateral G's. Lateral G forces are not experienced because there is no turn. The moment it will turn into a corner, the G force will, when the car is turning this way, the G force will go in the opposite direction.
What is the number?
It depends on the corner and what speed the corner.
Suppose
Again, we are going through Cox corner in Great Britain. Approximately 5 to 6 G's are experienced at very high speed corners.
So has there been any incident where the driver is passed out while taking
Many a times, yes, they have not passed out because they have to go through a very high training regimen. They do not do body. The main exercises they do to get them fit to drive an F1 car is your core, your neck, and your shoulders, because the core has to be very strong to withstand the G's. And an invention has been used in an F1 car where the helmet is actually connected to the car. So when they are braking, the head does not slam in the front and anything breaks. It will hold the head in position. But the lateral G-force experience, they have to have the neck muscles and the capacity to endure it. The training is in such a way that they are used to it.
Are biofuels used in F1?
Yes. This is a very good point. By 2026, Formula One expects to become 100% green fuel, basically biofuel. This year, 10% of biofuel has to be used along with the petrol. It has to be a compound of both of these fuels. Formula One aims to be carbon free, carbon neutral by 2026. The fuel that will be used will be come from bio-sustainable materials, and the fuel will become a complete biofuel by 2026. That is what they are aiming.
So how does this change of fuels affect the speed of the F1?
It definitely affects because the change in petrol will change in the behavior of the engine. Now there are different engines. All of the engines in an F1 car are not same. There are different manufacturers. Like Ferrari makes an engine, Mercedes has an engine, and Renault has an engine along with Honda. So all of these four cars have different engines. They cannot. The fuel types are also different. They have a basic outline, but the fuels used in each and every engine are different. The fuel is actually created along with the engine. It has to work along with the engine. Different engines, like let's say if you will put the fuel that Ferrari uses in a Mercedes engine, it might not perform how they want it to. There might be a slight difference. It can become slower. The efficiency will not be as much as the fuel customized for that engine.
Have you heard of a Concorde aircraft?
Uh,
A Concorde aircraft.
can you tell me what it is?
It's an aircraft which is very typically designed. It is a nose which is pointed downwards and it's a pointy nose.
Okay.
So that's the fastest aircraft ever built, a passenger jet. The fastest passenger jet ever built.
Mach
So
2.5.
yeah, that's Mach 2.05.
You can go to that speed. It looks more like a mosquito.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between its aerodynamics and normal aircraft aerodynamics? Is there a difference or is there no
There
difference?
is obviously difference. If there is a difference in speed, as you just mentioned, there has to be a difference in aerodynamic designing. As you mentioned, it has a mosquito-like nose. This might suit the design of the aircraft better. When there must be a higher low pressure being formed at the top of the shape. Basically, you are a marker. So the shape you are talking about is something like this. This is the aircraft.
No.
Like a download. If you can come and show me what shape you're talking about.
It's a very quick aircraft.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, that's all. So, okay, by looking at this, does it look like an airfoil shape? The basic fundamental.
yeah.
Is it basic like the fundamental?
Yeah.
Correct? So now what must be happening here, according to my understanding, is when the air is passing through this, it is at higher velocity because it is a rectangle, it is a more cornered shape, it is not smooth, it is rough like that. So the speed of the air must be faster over here in this shape. So therefore a low density is formed here and air is going completely normally here. So high density of air must be here. So this must be pushing it higher in the air and thus this aerodynamics will be much more efficient rather than regular designs. It is always advancing. So there will always be more breakthroughs in this.
Also, related to what he said, why doesn't an F1 car have a pointed nose like the Concorde? Like, now let's say there's a front wing over there. Why doesn't it have a pointing nose? It would cut through air easier.
It would cut through air easier. Let's imagine no front wing. Okay, this is what you're saying, right? The front wing is not
Yeah.
there. Now, if in that video, did you see there were vortices being created?
Yes.
Now imagine all of that turbulent air going through the car, through the barge boards, the bodywork, the suspension, the floor. You think there would be an issue? It would hinder the working. Correct? The air will not move in a uniform way. It will hinder the complete working of the car. That is good.
One more question. Like, it's related to aviation. When an aircraft takes off and the other aircraft is standing on the runway, it is instructed to stand there for at least 2 minutes. Because,
There must be some issue in
like you said, the word vortices. Vortices are created in aviation. We call it a wing tip vortices.
Yeah.
Then, for how long do you think these vortices can stay, and what are the factors that depend the timing at which these vortices can?
There are several different factors. It is not completely. It is kind of like when let's say when the airplane flies, there is a little bit of turbulent air in the top, which is the vortices. Now, assume the same concept as I explained in the car. Assume if a plane does it, how much more dangerous is it to go in that turbulent air? What if the aircraft doesn't work in the way it's supposed to with all this turbulent air? That answers your question why they have to wait. They have to wait till the airflow becomes streamlined and normal as it was before. Any other question?
What aerodynamic force is used to create both lift and downforce?
What kind of? Yeah.
Aerodynamic force is used to create both lift and downforce.
As I explained to you, an airfoil shape is used. I'll explain the working once more. Well, let's say this is moving at a very high speed through the atmosphere, through the air. As you can see, this is a more curved shape, correct? Therefore, the speed, the velocity of the air will be faster on top. And what do we know about pressure? If there is more velocity, there will be less particles present here. Over here, it is going at a slow speed because there is no curve. It is just going straight. So the pressure is higher here. Now we know that high pressure, the air will always move from an area of high pressure to low pressure. This is the basic fundamental. So therefore, when this air will try to go towards the high pressure, low pressure, it will cause a lift. It is a phenomenon that causes lift. If you will invert it, it will become a negative lift.
One more question. Like you said, when two F1 cars are like nearly neck to neck, they have reached their top speed, they have reached their max speed. You showed that last part of the car, the top car. You said that you open it up, it increases the speed. So why don't they keep it open for the rest of the time? And it is already increasing the top speed.
So repeat your question in the video part.
Okay. Yeah, you said when two cars are going neck to neck, one car wants to increase its speed. You showed that at the back of the car there is a device kind of, not device. Diffuser. Okay. So you told that they open it, like they change it.
That is DRS, that is completely different. The DRS is a mechanism that is on the rear wing. I'll show you what a diffuser is. A diffuser is at the bottom of the rear wing. There are two different components. If I don't have a model wing, maybe I can show it to you. Yeah. Okay. So I don't think it's very visible here. But at the bottom of the car, can you see the rear part of the car? So if this is the front wing, the diffuser is at the bottom. Even the exhaust way of the simple road cars, where the exhaust is,
Yes.
that is where the diffuser is located. At the bottom, at the very floor. It is connected with the floor of the car, the bottom floor.
So like I just wanted to ask it, why don't they keep it open for the rest of the race? Like it's already increasing the top speed.
Yeah. Okay. As I had I understood what your question is. Now you tell me, did I mention the fact that when the top speed increases, the downforce decreases, they're inversely proportional?
Yeah.
When in somebody else's question. So now in the corners, let's say that in the corner they're carrying too much of a speed. The brakes can only slow them down to a limit. The farther they brake from, the farther it goes. If that wing is open inside the corner, drag will be less. Now let me tell you, at the corner they need to slow down. They cannot take the corner at too high of a speed. They will crash and they will miss the corner. So if that wing is open, the downforce is decreasing. So it has to close before the end to create the drag, to increase the drag. If the drag decreases, it will not slow down in time. And it will cause a misbalance in the rear of the car, which can spin out. It has actually been tested before, what you are telling when DRS was newly introduced. They had many a time there is something known as a DRS failure, in which the flap stays open. It is unable to close. It is a mechanical system, an issue. So if that flap stays open, no doubt you are faster in the straight. But in the corner you will lose so much of downforce that you will take a lot of time you have to brake earlier. You have to brake earlier to make the corner. Other people will be braking much later. So they will lose less of a time in the corner compared to you. And the main time is gained through the corner. The corners are the place where the main speed is gained. The difference in timings comes from the corner.
Have there been any incidents, like when you just said, where DRS failure is there now, let's say, a crash occurs?
Not in recent times. In the past, let's say 7 to 8 years, there hasn't yet been a DRS issue. It has been tested in programs, and that's where our knowledge is from.
Okay.
Any other questions?